Welcome everyone. This is the afternoon session of Partnerships and Coalitions at the NatGLC workshops in the afternoon. We have about an hour and a half, 3 presentations for you. I'm Robert Shoemaker. I'll be your moderator for the day. And if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. We'll go through the presentations, give a presentation, and then hopefully a few minutes at the end of each one, we'll have some time for questions. But our first presentation is Outreach to Young and Underserved Ranchers, a focus group study in Kansas. And we have Cade Resnick with us with the Heritage Cattle Company. Cade is currently a board member of the Kansas Grazing Lands Coalition. His wife and he, Amanda, are raising 6th-generation Kansas ranchers with their sons Callan and Collier. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Their family manages a commercial cow herd, a background enterprise, and does custom grazing. Cade also works for Kansas State Research and Extension as director of the Central Kansas District. Prior to his administrative role, he was a livestock production agent for the district where he provided technical service and educational programs to agricultural producers with a focus on grazing livestock production, natural resource stewardship, and farm ranch management. Cade is a graduate of Kansas State University with a BS degree in animal science, minors in agronomy and agricultural economics. Welcome to the club. We're about the same darn thing on my end. And a master's degree in range science. He's been chairman of the Ranchland Trust of Kansas, president of the Kansas section for the Society of Range Management, board member of the Kansas Forage and Grassland Council. In addition, Cade is currently on the board of directors of the Kansas Soil Health Alliance. And so, is this for Russell?
Russell.
Oh, okay.
Russell didn't come.
Oh, okay. So we got something about Russell. So I'll skip through Russell here if we can. Let's see.
They might have got the wrong one on there, so.
Pardon me?
They might have got the wrong one on there.
Okay.
Morris can introduce himself.
Yeah, they probably do. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself when you come up.
All right.
But anyway, with that, Kate, come on up and we'll get started.
Go ahead, Barth, you can start it.
Okay. Where are you whacking?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, we've been around for a while. We were one of the GLCs that took off. Tim Christian, who was the public affairs officer for Kansas NRCS, helped make it go. And he was very persuasive in talking people into doing things. That's always been his strong suit. And so he helped put all this stuff together. And I was on the board initially. And Cade came on after a while. And when Tim finally decided that he was done working for other people, they made a radical change in life. They sold everything they had, bought a 5th wheel, and went on the road, and they're still out there somewhere wandering around, except that now they're in campgrounds all over the place. Anybody see Nomad Land? You know, where the people that went to the camps all the time? They're the camp hosts all over the place in this country, except they come home to see kids in the summer. Anyway, we're kind of always been behind trying to figure out who next, who to talk to, who we should be dealing with, what do our ranchers need, how are we missing, and how can we get in touch with them? And so one of the things that a past person who'd been really involved with everything in the way of grazing was, no, I can't say his name.
Calvin?
No, over in the Flint Hills.
Roger?
Dale. Anyway, he said, why are we still dealing with all the older folks? Apologies already to anybody that's an older rancher. Why are we still dealing with all these older folks? Why aren't we there making sure that the younger folks hear us, want to do it? Maybe they're more open to change. Maybe we don't understand what they're looking for. So that's where the focus group idea came from. And like, would that go this one? Yeah. And so we said we were going to do a CCGA, a collaborative conservation grant or agreement with NRCS. And I had previous experience with focus groups when I worked for Playa Lakes Joint Venture, every time I get bored with something, I get another job. So we keep moving around. But we had a bunch of other people we were looking at and thinking about, and Dale had done something already that made us sound like we knew what we were doing, so NRCS took a chance on us. And what Dale and his group had been doing, they were the Tallgrass Legacy Alliance, which is a rancher group in the Flint Hills. And what they decided they needed to do is they pulled in a bunch of younger ranchers. And you know, what's a younger rancher? Is it somebody under 50 or 40, you know, wherever. But we made it mandatory kind of a 40. And so they got these folks together, plus the people that they deal with, the other natural resource people that they talk to and listen to and work with. And they came up with a set of ideas about what was going on and what we should be asking and so forth. And after looking at that, we thought, let's start off with a premise that they're right. Let's write the grant that way. And one of the things we included was a series of 10 focus groups spread across Kansas to look at what those focus groups could tell us about what the young ranchers in those worlds wanted to do. And so that's what we did. We had hired a company called DJ Case that's done lots of natural resource questions and issues. They started out with wildlifers, which is why I knew about them. Because, yeah, I like ranching because I like the stuff. I grew up on one. My dad ran us off. He said, go find something else. This is too hard a job to work. And he said, go to school. So I started off as a geological engineer. And then I went into wildlife. And anyway, that's a long time ago. And so we tried these folks. Ducks Unlimited seems like a weird one to be ranching. But they're also the people that are your neighbors as ranchers in Kansas that don't qualify for NRCS programs because they're not producers, but they own enough land to be a problem if they're like, especially with the woody encroachment stuff, they seem to like their cedar trees and we don't. And so we have to talk to them and figure out ways so that they will help us keep our ranching stuff clean. So anyway, I don't even know what's on the next slide. Is that yours? I don't know. Well, let's look. So anyway, I'll let Cade finish this, but what we did was these focus groups gave us the answers we needed. And yes, the first group that had been put together before we had these had given us very similar answers. And so it really helped to put it together. And I think we've been living by what the focus groups have told us ever since. That's all. You're up.
Yeah, so part of the excitement around this project was, you know, it didn't really matter which group you were with, whether it was the Kansas Grazing Lands Association, K-State Research and Extension, Farm Bureau, KLA. It didn't really matter what group you were with. The common theme was that we had been talking to the same people for 30, 40, even 50 years. And so we kind of got content with our mode of delivery, with the information that we were giving folks, and as we started to realize some of the changes that we were seeing in what KGLC was doing, it was like, man, is that really what's working nowadays? Because we're seeing different folks, younger folks, show up to these events that we were having. We had them asking for new types of information, and they were asking for delivery methods that we, quite frankly, weren't accustomed to. And so as Bart said, and I think you were mentioning Dale Kirkham is who we were trying to come up with. Tallgrass Legacy Alliance, which is one of our partners, they were kind of first out of the chute in terms of trying to figure out who they needed to be reaching in terms of this new generation, but then also how. And so we kind of wanted to take that a step further and put a little bit more formality to it. And for those of you that are familiar with focus groups, it's not a quantitative type research, it's more of a qualitative in terms of you're just having dialogue, you're having conversations, asking questions, and as it has been mentioned several times at this conference already, that conversation and dialogue is almost way more worthwhile and valuable than some of our scientific research. So to be scientific though, we had some research objectives, and you guys can read that just as well as I can. We really kind of set out to determine 5 things out of this focus group study. And for those that aren't familiar with Kansas, we're a fairly diverse state in terms of geography, in terms of population, in terms of ranching and farming practices. And so it was only fitting that because we are a statewide organization that we go statewide with our focus group. So we kind of pinpointed, I say we, Barth was our ringleader on this, we kind of pinpointed 10 specific locations that we wanted to reach out to. And within each of those areas, we wanted to keep the group small. We didn't want to be bombarded with too many heads and too many thoughts. We didn't want to take the fair board approach and have 40 fair board members talking to us at one time. We kind of wanted to keep it small and get good, sound feedback from our young ranchers. And so you can see here, the idea was to keep it 10 or 12 folks, and in some locations we were better than others. The one interesting was Jetmore, which is here in kind of west central Kansas. We kind of picked that one out as an outlier because that's big open country. It's very dry out there, but Jetmore's got a unique population of small ruminant producers, specifically sheep. And so that is one of the underserved audiences that we kind of felt like we had done maybe a poor job, if you will, of reaching out to, was our small ruminant producers. We've always been focused so heavily on cattle in Kansas that we kind of forgot about that group. So that was one of the reasons we picked Jetmore, was to talk to those folks. These were our 5 kind of key issues that we wanted to focus on and get some feedback on. And again, I'm going to expand on these. You guys can read them. But to kind of jump right in there, and I apologize, these are kind of word-heavy slides, but these were the 4 questions on this issue that we asked them. Why are you a rancher? How do you view your relationship with the land? What do you feel like the status will be when you're done? And then what perceptions does the public have about ranchers that you'd like to change? So I think, again, that's been mentioned at this conference a number of times. Well, what did we get from them? And I'm paraphrasing a long report, and we do have copies of this that thankfully Barth brought. If you want to pick a copy of it up, we've got that. It's also posted online. But as with most of our experienced ranchers, they didn't take the job lightly. They didn't come into it lightly. They feel that responsibility to the land. And just as many of the older or experienced ranchers hope to do, they want to leave it better than they got it. And it was a consensus across the board outside of one individual. They would like to pass it on if the opportunity presents itself. That one person saw this deal as strictly a business decision, and he didn't have any emotional tie to the land. It was purely a business thing. And that was very much a unique or individualistic comment that we got, and I don't throw him under the bus for that. It was just very different from everybody else. But what we took home from just their attitudes and motivations about ranching is that there's a lot of other discussions that can be had that as we communicate with other stakeholders that maybe aren't in ranching and farming, that we can really hang our hat on some of those comments. And again, that was talked about here, is that we've got to do a better job at telling our story as the ranching and farming communities, because we can't forget that our ultimate customer is that consumer at the end, and they demand, or are starting to demand, more of the background on their products. And so that's where this really fits in. So the second issue that we wanted to talk about it, because this is kind of at the core of our mission at KGLC, is what information do you need to be successful back at your home operation? We're kind of in the business of not only conservation but education, and so we also wanted to know, who is it that you want to hear? Who do you want to talk to? And in kind of the logistics side of things and putting together some of our educational events, we were interested in what's their aptitude to travel and do some of those things. Well, the first and foremost thing, and this is what we wanted to kind of pass along to the other GLCIs and that, is that they don't want pie-in-the-sky theoretical crap, quite frankly. They want practical, hardcore stuff that they can immediately go home and put into practice. The one thing that we took home from the young rancher groups is that while they have a mindset that's geared towards environmental quality and conservation, they are laser focused on the business side. And I think that's somewhat been driven home with some of their upbringings, is that oftentimes we've treated ranching and farming maybe too much as a lifestyle and a tradition. We forgot about the business aspect, and these younger folks are not dumb. They've figured that out, and they know the importance of having that business sense. They're very straightforward people, and because of that, they want to hear from you guys. They want to hear from the experienced ranchers out there, their neighbors. They do not want to hear from academics. They do not want to hear from researchers. And quite frankly, they don't even want to hear from the industry folks that are selling products. They want to hear from their neighbor. They want to hear from their mentor. They want to hear from, other real-world practitioners that are out there. As I said before, they're focused on profitability and the bottom line. So while conservation is important, that conservation practice needs to pay in the long run. And it has to outweigh the effort and the energy that it takes to put it in play. Again, going back here, that ideal spokesperson, we kind of asked them about who that might be. It's people that are either their fathers, their grandfathers, their neighbors, or someone that resembles someone that they can connect to. That's who they're more likely to go to than someone from K-State or Montana State or wherever you are. They want to hear from practitioners. They don't want to hear from researchers. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow because I'm kind of an academic too, and so I had to change my thoughts about that. So what are some of the barriers that they identified as conservation barriers? And we asked them those top 3 questions. And again, I go back to that laser focus on profit. They want things that are going to pay, but they want to do it right, and they do want to implement conservation where they can. But as of right now, none of them really conveyed the fact that that's at the top of their list. It's a priority, but it's not priority number 1. Because of how they were brought up within their families, many of them were already predisposed towards conservation, but if it doesn't commensurate with that effort and cost, they kind of lose interest. They are less motivated by incentivized programs, specifically some of the government-sponsored ones, so take your pick. Partners programs, USDA, NRCS, those types of things. They're actually more apt to go out and do it on their own if they can stay independent from some of that red tape that we're all aware of. Likewise, they also mentioned that they're not really all that interested in programs that are being pushed by industry, or by private industry, I guess I should say. So as we get into this carbon market thing and some of these other things that are being pushed more by the private sector, it'll be interesting to see how much that's adopted by the younger generation, just because they want to stay independent. They want to do their own thing. So kind of some interesting feedback on that. Information sources, this was really kind of what the bread and butter or meat and potatoes that we wanted to find. And again, I've kind of alluded to that already, is they want to hear from people like themselves. They don't want the logoed people coming in. They don't want the people with 15 letters behind their name. They want to hear from like-minded ranchers that are out doing the things that they need to do. In terms of gatherings, they're cool with coming to stuff, but they want to keep it informal. So they're much like their older counterparts. They like the informal things, the coffee shop, the peer groups. They're not quite as prone to maybe go to like extension meetings. They are willing to go to like livestock association meetings because it's a social thing more than it is an educational thing. They are a little bit untrusting of government and the large organizations that are out there. So when anything like these peer groups or these financial benchmarking type things, if it's more of an organic deal where it was started by their friends or buddies or people they know, they're a lot more willing to go to that type of stuff than if it has K-State Purple on it or whatever other university, or even KGLC for that fact. They want to stay kind of outside of the barriers of some of these things that getting involved with government or industry can put on them. Kansas is very rural, and so we do have some places in the state that don't have very good broadband, but in the places that do, and even the places that don't, they try to seek out online resources. They are just like the rest of the United States. They're migrating towards digital information. They're Facebookers, they're Instagrammers, they're Twitters, they're podcasters, and that's something that, for me, I took home that I just didn't realize. I'm thinking, all right, you got a bunch of young cowboys out there that are horseback. They still jingle when they walk. They're driving feed trucks. They've got to be into the old way of learning, and that just isn't the case. They are so hungry for online information, it's not even funny. And folks, I'm here to tell you, the majority of us in ag are way behind out here in the field. We just haven't done that. So we're leaning on people like Laura to bring us into the new generation and get us connected with these folks. They want the organized events, they want the networking and educational events, but they want to be able to access that stuff on their own. What that means is, just like what he's doing in the back, they want the recordings of stuff because they want to be able to access that at midnight if they're still up thinking about stuff. They want to access that while they're out feeding. They don't want to take the time necessarily to go to an organized conference. So I'll try to wrap up here real quick. Some of the potential messages, because we do have this conservation aspect, we wanted to try to test some messages on what they felt was the most appealing in terms of if other groups were to try to advocate for ag, what would it be that caught their attention? And I'll apologize for this next slide again, it's a lot of words, but these were the three messages that we pitched out to them that said, all right, which one of these rings your bell? Which one of these, if you were necessarily not involved with ranching, or if you were needing to make some changes to your ranch specific to native grasslands, which one of these would appeal to you the most? And I know I'm not giving you a lot of time, but raise of hands, who thought number 1 might be the most appealing? Number 2 and number 3. All right. So the winner is number 3, actually, because while all I talked about in the beginning was profit and business and focused on the ranch, that message actually resonated the best with them, and it was the environmental one. It's the one that they felt kind of hit home in the middle between environment and ranch. It's positive, and they kind of connected with what's good for the environment is good for our ranch. So it wasn't just totally the business aspect, and it wasn't totally wildlife or environment. It was kind of in the middle. But all three of the messages were very motivating to them, and they felt like that all three of those messages, if they were kind of melded together, could really make a powerful message to the constituents out there, the stakeholders out there that maybe think a little bit different about ag than what we do. As I said before, we've got the report printed here if you'd like a copy of it, but if you'd rather go online, if you're one of those younger ranchers that's prone to go online, we do have it on our KGLC website. So Barth, you can tell us what all's come from this and we'll wrap up.
Well, there's one each of these. This is where KGLC is right now. It's our income and it's a snapshot in time. We're like ranchers. Our income goes up and down. Our expenses don't. But they can, if you run out of money, quit having the expense because you fire people. So that's 1 year. We've managed to get grants from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We're working on one from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And we've been working a lot with NRCS. And so, Laura, stand up. This is our marketing person. And all of our people are contractors. We don't hire anybody because that's a pain in the ass to go through employees and all that kind of stuff. So they're all marketers. And everybody else, they're paying their own way. But what we found was we recruit people, well, Laura's still this way. She wants the money because I know, I got to tell her the check for last month just came in today. So when we get home, she'll get paid again. But for now, what most of them want to do, the technical advisor people that we hire are all retired range cons that want to finally do their job. Instead of sitting in the office and doing EEO training and whatever other kind of training feds have you do, and filling out reports and being told stay in the office till somebody calls you, they want to go see them. So they're out there running around, making contact with people, following up on crazy calls, and still getting out and doing it. And I think that's why they're happy. They don't get paid much through our contracts, but they're doing what they want to do. And like one of them said, we can go on cruises with this money because I really don't need to earn it anyway. But so they're having fun. And some of the things that came out, especially this, Laura's part of the world is a lot of the things that really, really grew. And some of these are kind of, if you want to go to our YouTube channel and look at those. Some of these talks by these guys are amazing. One of the ones is that rancher Bill Sproul talked about how he and the beaver that had moved onto his place, they hadn't been there for years, and they came in, and next thing he knows, he's trying to get through his crossing and get stuck in the mud, and he's kind of mad at the beaver, but he also won the Leopold Award for Kansas first year that was offered, and he said, Aldo will be mad at me if I kill that beaver. How am I going to make this work? What you don't know is that Bill's son, about 6 months before we filmed that, had been cleaning out the trickle tube in the dam that the beaver had clogged, got sucked into it, and died. but he still likes the beaver. So lots of this stuff comes together. The other thing I think that we need to learn out of all of this is if you want to make a KGLC or any kind of GLC work, you've got to keep finding out what your people want, then go find money that you can use to make that happen. You don't lie to the people that are giving you the money, but don't tell them everything. Make it work. And then keep going, and keep finding younger people to replace yourself. That's why in a year I'm gone. Because other people, younger people, still have more excitement about it than you do after you've been doing this stuff for 45 years. I still love it, but I don't have the fire. It's more like a kind of an ember. It's still kind of glowing a little bit now and then. But other than that, it's not there. So keep working on getting more people to do it. We've put together several things. The people that put together that top drafted for rancher succession thing, farm succession thing, they used our report to go out and look at who should advise them, who should be on their advisory crew, and they got the grant for 1 3-year deal, and they've been told if you submit again, we'll probably give you another $748,000. And we started trying because we're doing sessions with Nat GLC. We're writing little contracts with them to do things that weren't in our other grants, and they've been really fun, really good to do. It's sometimes I feel like we're taking Nat GLC and money when we didn't earn it, but because it's too much fun. Is there one more? Should be. And so we're going to put in for 2 more CCGA grants. We're already here at the conference networking with people to find out how we can write it up so that it'll work for everybody, because we want to be an example to the rest of the GLCs. If we can write it and you can do it in your state, borrow our stuff, steal our stuff, don't hire us to do it, we'll just do it. And then we're trying to get to the point where, and we have with NRCS, at least in our state, they've been calling us and saying, we have a need for people that we can't hire otherwise. Can you write it this way? Oh, heck yes, we can write it that way. We want the money, it'll get the thing done. So we're writing the grants, and they help us write it, and we let them know ahead of time who the contractors will be, and that makes them excited about got their hand in choosing who comes and works with them. So I think with a new person in a year who's younger, fired up, crazy to do it, but he's still going to do it, this organization will just keep growing. And I'll hang around and look in once in a while and see whether they're staying true to what we say. But other than that, bye-bye.